If someone had told me a week ago that one decision, a single favor to my cousin, would alter the entire course of my life, I'd have laughed it off like any overworked, exhausted young woman clinging to the last threads of her dreams. My name is Evelyn Carter, and this is the story of how I went from counting loose change for bus fare to owning a business empire spanning 3 continents. It all began on a cold Wednesday evening. I was finishing my shift at a small cafe on the outskirts of the city. My hands ached, my feet screamed, and my dreams, well, they felt like distant echoes in a crowded room. I'd moved to the city 3 years prior with big plans of starting my own graphic design agency, but life had other ideas. Bills piled up, my landlord's patience ran thin, and every day blurred into the next. That evening, as I wiped down a table, my phone buzzed. "Evie, I need a huge favor." It was my cousin Amelia, who worked at the Windsor Heights Hotel, one of those marble-floored, chandelier-draped places you'd never dare enter, unless you had at least 4 zeros in your bank account. The receptionist called in sick. Amelia's message continued. "I'm desperate. Just for tonight. Please." I stared at the screen. Me? In a luxury hotel lobby? I had no experience, no training, and definitely no business standing behind a gleaming granite reception desk. But the extra cash might help keep the lights on another week. Fine, send me the address. I arrived an hour later, nerves twisting in my stomach. The lobby was everything I expected, and more. Crystal fixtures, plush velvet seating, the scent of fresh orchids in the air. Guests swept past in tailored suits and designer heels. Their lives a million miles away from mine. Amelia quickly handed me a maroon scarf, part of the uniform, and a crash course in hotel software. "You'll be fine," she smiled. "Just be polite, check them in, and try not to faint when you see the room rates." I managed a shaky nod. The first couple of guests were easy enough. A traveling businessman, a retired couple from France. I fumbled a little, but no disasters. And then he walked in. I noticed him instantly. Tall, sharply dressed in a tailored charcoal suit that probably cost more than my rent for the year. Dark hair, intense gaze. The kind of presence that made the room tilt slightly, as if acknowledging his importance. He approached the desk, and I struggled to keep my composure. "Good evening, sir. Welcome to the Windsor Heights," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "Reservation." "For Alexander Reed," he replied. I typed the name, praying I wouldn't mess up. There it was. "Penthouse suite." "Your suite is ready, Mr. Reed," I said, handing him the key card. "Would you like assistance with your luggage?" "I travel. Light." He glanced at my name tag. "First night?" I hesitated. "Is it that obvious?" A small smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "You're doing fine." Something about his tone was different, not condescending like so many others. Genuine. He took his key and started to leave, then paused. "Sometimes," he said, almost as an afterthought, "the most unexpected detours lead you exactly where you need to be." And then he was gone. I stood there for a moment, heart pounding, not entirely sure what had just happened. The rest of the night passed in a blur. A few late check-ins, a minor mix-up with a wake-up call, nothing I couldn't handle. But his words lingered. The most unexpected detours lead you exactly where you need to be. I didn't know it then, but those words would become a cornerstone of my future. As my shift ended at dawn, Amelia met me in the break room. "You did great, Evie," she said, handing me a small envelope. Inside was my pay for the night, and a bonus tip from Mr. Reed, 2 crisp $100 bills. I blinked. "He tipped me?" Amelia grinned. "Apparently, he never does that. Said you have potential." I went home that morning with a strange mixture of exhaustion, disbelief, and a spark of something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The morning after my unexpected shift at the Windsor Heights Hotel, the city felt different. Maybe it was the way the first rays of dawn bounced off the glass towers, or the way the streets hummed with people chasing whatever it was they believed in. Or maybe it was those $200 bills tucked safely in my coat pocket. Money that wasn't meant for groceries or rent, but a tiny sliver of breathing space. I made myself a promise that morning. One small step. Just one. The cafe felt smaller that day. The coffee machine hissed. The same regulars came and went, but my head wasn't in it. Between orders, I scribbled designs on napkins, logos, business names, random concepts. Things I'd long buried under late rent notices and soul-sucking double shifts. By noon, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. Evelyn Carter? The voice was calm, assured. This is Alexander Reed. I almost dropped the phone. Mr. Reed, relax. I asked your cousin for your number. Panic and curiosity wrestled inside me. I have a proposition, he continued. Meet me at the Windsor Heights Lounge, 7 p.m. I'll explain. Before I could process what was happening, the call ended. p.m. I stood outside the hotel, nerves buzzing. I kept telling myself I had nothing to lose. Worst case, it was a misunderstanding. Best case, well, I didn't dare imagine. The lounge was dimly lit, all deep leather chairs and the faint scent of aged whiskey. He sat in a corner booth, a black notebook on the table. Sit, he gestured, offering a polite nod. I did. He didn't waste time. I noticed something about you, he said, studying me like a puzzle. You don't belong behind a counter, not because you aren't capable, because you're meant for more. I swallowed. I appreciate the compliment, but I built my first company with $37 and a second-hand laptop in a rented basement. His words cut through my doubts like a scalpel. Everyone starts somewhere. The difference is who decides to keep climbing. I stayed silent, every part of me listening. I invest in people, he continued. And I have a project that needs someone hungry, someone stubborn, someone with eyes like yours. I blinked. What kind of project? He smiled. I'm opening a startup incubator, a place for people with ideas but no means. Designers, coders, marketers, dreamers. You'd run the front desk, meet the teams, manage schedules, learn how ideas are built and funded. If you survive 6 months, you'll leave with your own startup capital. I stared at him. It sounded insane. And yet, why me? I finally whispered. Because you said yes to a shift you weren't trained for. Because you didn't crumble. Because you have nothing to lose. And that makes you dangerous in the best way. He slid a card across the table. Think about it. Call if you're in. And just like that, he left. That night, I couldn't sleep. I Googled him. Forbes articles. Interviews, profiles. Alexander Reed wasn't just rich. He was a legend in tech circles. Self-made. Ruthless. Generous to a fault. And he wanted me. By dawn, I'd made my decision. I called the number on the card. I'm in. The next 6 months tested me in ways I didn't think possible. I juggled cafe shifts and incubator hours. I answered phones, booked conference rooms, managed impossible egos and fragile visions. I watched ideas crash and burn, and others turn into million-dollar investments, and I learned, more than college ever taught me, how to pitch, how to budget, how to navigate failure, how to spot someone who was all talk, how to recognize the look in someone's eyes when their entire world balanced on a single yes or no. Alexander became more than a boss. He became a mentor, the kind who didn't sugarcoat but never let you quit. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, he called me into his office. You've done well, he said. Better than expected. I didn't know what to say. He handed me a slim envelope. Inside, a check for $25,000. Seed money for your own venture, he said, if you want it. My throat tightened. Why? Because, he smiled. The most unexpected detours lead you exactly where you need to be. And in that moment, I realized he wasn't just changing my life. He was handing me the pen to write my own. I stared at the check in my hands, the numbers blurring under the weight of my disbelief. $25,000. To someone else it might have been a vacation budget, a new car, a drop in the ocean. To me, it was the currency of freedom. For a moment, every memory of scraped knees, skipped meals, and nights spent sketching designs under a flickering bulb rushed through me. All the people who'd told me to be realistic, to stop chasing unpayable dreams, their voices collided with this single undeniable truth in my palm. I could finally start, but start what? That night, I spread out every sketch, logo, idea, and business plan draft I'd ever scribbled on cafe receipts, napkins, and scrap paper. The floor of my tiny studio apartment turned into a chaotic canvas of color and possibility. I didn't sleep. I couldn't. By morning, I knew, a digital branding agency, but not just another logo farm, a boutique service specializing in underdog startups, people like me. Those who never got a seat at the table because they couldn't afford the entry fee. Name, Ember & Co. Tagline, from spark to flame. It wasn't polished, but it was mine. I met Alexander at the incubator the next afternoon, business plan in hand. He scanned it in silence. Finally, he looked up. It's raw, risky. Most investors would laugh you out of the room. My stomach tightened. But I'm not most investors, he added, lips curving into the hint of a grin. I'll back it. And just like that, Ember & Coers was born. The first months were chaos. I worked out of my apartment, juggling client calls, invoicing, and design work. The only employee was me. My office was a second-hand laptop and a whiteboard I dragged home from a dumpster behind the incubator. My first client was a failed tech founder trying to rebrand his reputation. I charged him less than I should have. Delivered more than he expected. Word spread. The second client came from his referral. The third from a cafe napkin sketch I made for a woman venting about her bakery business. Each time I learned, adapted, and hustled harder. By month 4, I'd hired a freelance coder and a social media manager, both survivors of Alexander's incubator who, like me, weren't willing to fold. We worked nights, fueled by cheap pizza and bad coffee. Our website crashed 3 times. A contract fell through. I cried in my tiny bathroom more times than I can count, but I didn't quit. I couldn't. Then came the break. A mid-tier startup, Nova Pulse, was prepping for a product launch. Their agency pulled out last minute. They were desperate, panicked, and out of options. Through some miracle, or fate, my number landed in the CEO's hands. We need a full digital rollout in 10 days, she said over the phone. Logo, campaign visuals, social strategy. You in? My stomach dropped. I wanted to say no. It was too big, too soon, too impossible. But Alexander's voice echoed in my head. The most unexpected detours. I'm in. Those 10 days nearly broke us. We slept in shifts, coded in our socks, ate standing up. A designer fainted from exhaustion. I got a stress rash, but every hurdle fueled us. And on launch day, Nova Pulse's campaign went viral. Not just viral. Industry headlines viral. Suddenly, Ember & Co. wasn't a scrappy unknown anymore. We were the agency that pulled off the impossible. Emails flooded in. Investors called. Bigger clients circled. I walked into the incubator's Friday pitch night like I owned the place. Alexander was waiting. I saw the numbers, he said. I smiled. Exhausted but proud. We're just getting started, he laughed, clapping a hand on my shoulder. Told you, Carter. It's not about where you begin. It's about who refuses to stay there. That night, back in my apartment, which was quickly turning into a real office, I stood by the window, looking out at the city skyline. And for the first time, I didn't feel like an outsider. I belonged. Not because someone gave me permission, but because I took it. Months turned into years. What started as a desperate one-woman hustle in a shoebox apartment evolved into a boutique agency known for turning underdog startups into household names. Ember & Co. grew faster than I was ready for. At first I hired freelancers, then built a full-time team. The whiteboard walls of my studio office turned into floor-to-ceiling strategy boards in a downtown loft. Our client list read like a wish list. Tech disruptors, indie clothing brands, even a non-profit that made national headlines. For every win, there were setbacks, contracts lost, campaigns that flopped, investors who doubted us, nights when my body ached and my mind whispered, "You're still that broke girl pulling double shifts." But every morning, I got up. Not because I wasn't scared, because I refused to let fear decide for me. The $1,000,000 phone call I'll never forget, the call that changed everything. It was a cold January evening. The office was quiet, my team long gone. I was finalizing a proposal when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Evelyn Carter?" The voice was sharp, confident. "This is Nathan Hale, CEO of VentureTech." I froze. VentureTech wasn't just any company. They were the holy grail, a $1 billion tech firm known for innovative campaigns and ruthless standards. "We've been following your work," he continued. "I want to meet, tomorrow." I showed up at their glass tower headquarters feeling like a fraud in my best thrift store blazer. Nathan didn't bother with small talk. "We're launching a global platform in 90 days. I want Ember & Co. to run the entire campaign." Breath caught. "It's a multi-million-dollar contract. High risk. Zero room for error. You in?" Every cell in my body screamed to say no. But I thought of that girl behind the hotel reception desk, the one who stepped into a shift she wasn't trained for, who said yes when the safe choice was no. I'm in. 90 days of war, those. 3 months nearly killed us. We opened a second office, hired more staff. I barely slept. I missed birthdays, skipped holidays. My apartment turned into a ghost town, but we delivered. On launch day, VentureTech's platform shattered records. News outlets called it the boldest digital campaign of the decade, and Ember & Co. was no longer a name people whispered. It was one they chased. The Billionaire Club. 6 months later, the numbers came in. We'd cleared 80 million in revenue that year. I sat in my office, now a sleek, glass-walled space in the city's business district, staring at the spreadsheet that confirmed what I already knew. I was a billionaire. I didn't cry, didn't scream. I smiled, because it wasn't about the number. It was about what it meant. Proof that starting broke didn't mean you stayed there, that no one's past had the right to chain their future, that one small, reckless yes could lead to everything. The return I visited the Windsor Heights Hotel that evening. Same marble floors. Same scent of polished wood and expensive perfume. I asked to speak with the manager. When he arrived, I extended my hand. "I'm Evelyn Carter." His face lit up in recognition. "Ms. Carter, the Billionaire CEO?" I smiled. "The same. We talked, laughed. I even tipped the new receptionist an amount that made her eyes fill with tears. On my way out, I paused by the old reception desk. I could almost see my younger self standing there, tired, anxious, unaware her entire life was about to change, and I silently thanked her for not walking away. The lesson people ask me what my secret was. There isn't one. I was never the smartest, richest, or most connected person in the room, but I was the one who said yes when it was terrifying, when it made no sense. When every voice said I couldn't, and that's what changed everything. So if you're watching this, doubting your worth, your timing, your potential, listen to me. You don't have to be ready. You just have to show up. Say yes. Let life find you.